Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Hello and thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Isiah. In today's podcast, we're going to follow up with some news about Kobe Bryant and just see the great ways in which he's been honored throughout the league. We'll talk about Victor Oladipo finally coming back from injury. We'll check in on the Dame Lillard versus Westbrook matchup that everyone seems to love to see. Then we'll see Kyrie's first game since Kobe passed away. We'll talk about an historic game between the Timberwolves and the Kings before ending the show with some predictions on the biggest games happening over the next few days. Now, if you didn't listen to my last podcast, it was completely dedicated just to Kobe Bryant. And I mean, if you follow the NBA, you know by now, but just to kind of give a refresher, he passed away Sunday, January 26th, with his daughter Gianna and 7 others as well. I didn't mentioned that enough in my last podcast. I apologize for that because other lives were affected as well. But of course, Kobe, the biggest name because he's just known worldwide. He's just an icon and a big name in the basketball world and just in the world in general. So to have someone as young as he was, 41 years old, pass away, it was just shocking, really. No one really saw it coming. No one really expected it. And the timing of it was interesting as well. LeBron had just passed him on the all-time scoring list, so it was just insane to hear that such a legend had passed away at such a young age, because you don't really see such high caliber players like he was pass away like that. And we kind of talked about how shocking it was to it, like the whole world as a whole. I mean, it's kind of one of those deaths that kind of just stop the world. You know, everything that's going on around you just seems in slow motion all of a sudden and just doesn't feel real. We talked about his legacy and just how great he was and everything he accomplished on and off the basketball court. But it continues. I mean, this whole week they've been still talking about Kobe. Teams have been, hurting, players around the league, organizations, they've just been hurting with this news. And when I say like around the world, he meant something. Even in Spain, Barcelona and Real Madrid, 2 top clubs in the soccer world, both had moments of silence before they went to training for Kobe Bryant. So his reach stretched much farther than just the NBA world. And players like Kawhi, who apparently uses the same helicopter, service and had the same pilot as Kobe, is somebody that's hurting as well. He was talking about it, about how Kobe inspired him and how when he first was moving over back to LA, that Kobe had suggested using helicopters, and that's the way Kawhi would get from San Diego to LA, because he would have a house in San Diego as well. And I mean, everyone that they've been interviewing all say that they looked up to Kobe growing up, and it just shows that he was the face of this last generation and the face of everyone, or most of the stars that play in the NBA today. They looked up to Kobe. He was the Michael Jordan of our generation. It's really cool to be seeing on social media. There's this trend where a bunch of students in classrooms just gather together and ball up a piece of paper, whatever kind of message the teacher wanted them to have, any like fears or doubts or anything of that sort. They crumple up the piece of paper and they all aim at a trash can in the middle of the room and yell, Kobe, like I'm sure many of us did as kids. I did. So it's just really cool trend to see. Other things on social media like Shaq on NBA TNT, he was sharing his message, about how he takes things for granted. He was saying how he doesn't talk to his friends nearly enough and not nearly as much as he should, saying how he hadn't talked to Kobe since he told him to go for 50 in 2016 on his last game, and then he went for 60. And he was just saying how, he'll never get to joke around with Kobe again. That kind of banter between the two, the love-hate relationship that those two shared, to see Shaq as emotional as he was heartbreaking. And same thing with Dwayne Wade as well. Dwayne Wade was on set. He was recounting his memories of getting into the league and only wanting one person to show him respect and see him as an equal, and that was Kobe Bryant. And eventually he did that. And he recounted a play where he stripped Kobe Bryant and went down the floor and scored and thought in his mind that, he's going to call his homies from back home, tell him what he did. And that was a big moment for him. Obviously, it wasn't a big moment for Kobe because of just how astronomical he was. But to a kid like Dwayne Wade at the time, it was everything. And that's just what he meant to Dwayne Wade, what he meant to Shaq. And they both had great messages about, just really appreciating who's around you and just appreciating him as a whole. And players around the league as well, showing respect. Quinn Cook, currently on the Lakers right now, he's changing his number. A lot of players kind of following suit with this. He's changing his number to 28. 2 for Gianna and 8 for Kobe's first number as a Laker. But Gianna wore number 2 for her team that, the Mamba team that Kobe had founded and was coaching or whatever. She wore 2 in her games. Her favorite school was UConn, and they left a number 2 jersey on their bench to honor her in their last game, which I thought was really cool. And typically these jersey swaps, like I said, Quinn Cook changing his number, these jersey swaps, you need to notify the league months in advance usually. But given the circumstances and just the outpouring of players that have wanted to change their numbers or just use different numbers for right now, they were absolutely okay with it. And so a lot of players across the league have done this. Markieff Morris from Detroit, he was number 8, but now he's going to be number 88 to pay double respect to Kobe. Other players like Dinwiddie changed his number from 8 to 26. And then there are players like Terrence Ross, Zaire Smith, Mo Harkless, Alec Burks. All of these players are changing their numbers. And like I said, a lot of players and a lot of organizations are unofficially retiring his numbers. There is no league-wide decision. But if there was a league-wide decision to retire his number, it's safe to say that every player would be okay with it. But on the other hand, there are players who wear the 24 and will continue to do so in honor of him. Players like Buddy Hield, where he said he wants to wear the 24 in his honor, and just because of how much Kobe meant to him, he wants to continue wearing the number. And if there was a league-wide decision to retire these numbers, he would be okay with it. But for now, he'll keep the 24. And he ended up going off too, so we'll talk about that later. Embiid also wore number 24 just for one game against the Warriors. We'll talk about that later as well. And then after learning about his passing, there were some games where there was just some eerie stat lines, and eerie in a good way. Like, it's obvious that there's a higher calling, a higher power, making these players do fantastic things. Trae Young, for example, we talked about it. He wore number 8 for the first couple minutes of his game a couple days ago when he learned of the passing of Kobe Bryant, and when he played against the Wizards, he tweeted about this later, saying Kobe was with him, and I believe it 100% because listen to this: first player to have a 45-point double-double with under 25 field goal attempts since who else but Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant did it in December 17, 2006. And Trae Young also did this on 24 shots, 24 being Kobe's last number of his career. And Trae Young was also 81% from the free throw line. And famously, Kobe Bryant dropped 81 points second highest outpouring of scoring ever in the league history. So to have all those stats, be the first player since Kobe to have this double-double with under 25 field goals, to have had 24 shots, Kobe's number, and 81% is just crazy. And then to add to that, Devin Booker as well, combined with Trey, if you combine their numbers for the day, it just combined for 81 points on the same night, and they each took 24 shots, and they combined for 81 points. So there's no way that it's just a coincidence that they both take 24 shots and end up with 81 together when they both, obviously care for Kobe. And so I think that, Kobe's playing with a lot of fate in these games, and many players had 24 points as well on that night. Embiid, we'll talk about that later. He had 24 points in his latest game. Brandon Ingram for the Pelicans in their win over the Cavs. Siakam and Ibaka both had 24 in their win against the Hawks. Dylan Brooks, where the Grizzlies beat the Nuggets. That's kind of crazy. Big news in itself, beating the Nuggets. And so all those players scored 24 points. I don't think that's just a coincidence. And then there are also players that took this news and just wanted to go off for Kobe, I think, because they're players like Middleton and Beal who just went off out of nowhere. Middleton had a career-high 51 points, and the Bucks dropped 151 points against the Wizards. That is just insane. And Beal, on the other hand, he had 47. The Wizards managed 131 points in a game, and they ended up getting blown out by 20. That's just unfair. But yeah, both these players went off, played really well. There's also been some discussions and an online petition to make Kobe the logo, which, honestly, I'd be cool with that. I mean, there's been talk about changing the logo for a long time now. It's a little outdated. It's Jerry West right now, in case you didn't know. And Jerry West doesn't even like being the logo. And with as much as Kobe meant to Jerry West, I feel like he would be very okay with passing on the mantle just because it's Kobe and just because he doesn't even care to be the logo anyway. So I think that'd be a great way for the NBA to honor Kobe Bryant and be a good new refresher for the NBA as well. The Lakers organization as a whole, they're hurting. Obviously, their franchise had Kobe around for 20 years. And so that organization is going to be hurting a lot more than all the others. They canceled their game against the Clippers, which I thought was definitely right to do. It's just difficult to try and put together such an event like that, especially against the Clippers too. Such a big deal like that so quickly when they're still grieving as much as they are. And I can't even imagine how they feel, how LeBron would feel. But yeah, Frank Vogel thinks that the healing together just makes them closer, and I think that's very true. I mean, this team's already playing as well as they are, and even though it is such a tragedy, it will ultimately bring them together, make them stronger, and they're going to want to, carry this out and get a championship for Kobe in the end. So I can't believe I'm saying this as a Warriors fan, but I honestly hope that the Lakers win the championship this year just for Kobe. I mean, I just think it would be very poetic, and it would be a great moment for the league as a whole, I think. But yeah, they play their next game Friday against the Blazers, which I'm expecting some serious fireworks for. I think it's going to be a great event, and I just hope that, the Lakers can pull out a win. Vanessa as well. Vanessa was Kobe Bryant's wife. She finally broke her silence, but in no way does she owe us anything. I saw a lot of people online saying, I can't believe she hasn't said anything yet, like all this and that. But when you're grieving like this, losing a daughter and your husband, you can't expect anything from her. But she did break her silence, obviously saying she's still in shock, but appreciates all the love, hopes that the other families as well can heal properly, and that, just give her the right respect and space for them to grieve properly. And I think it was really big of her to have already addressed everyone, on social media the way that news flies these days. But I just really hope that, she heals well, and it's obviously tough. It's going to take a while. So again, I just want to say rest in peace, Kobe Bryant and his daughter, Gianna, and of course all the other victims as well. I can only pray for the best for their families affected, and yeah, just hope that they heal over time. We'll be right back right after this.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Isiah, and we just talked about, a little more about Kobe Bryant's death and just what he's meant across the league and how they've spent time honoring him and just really appreciating him and what he is and as an icon of the NBA. And just, some great developments, some crazy stat lines across the league. Very Kobe-esque. There's some more we'll talk about later on as well. But kind of switching gears now, Victor Oladipo, who is a player on the Indiana Pacers, has been injured for quite some time. He's been out for 375 days, so just a little over a year. But he's finally back. He arrived to his game in a number 8 Western Conference All-Star jersey for who else but Kobe Bryant. Honor him. Oladipo hadn't played in so long because he had a ruptured quad tendon in his right knee January 23rd, 2019 against the Raptors. And it was just a horrific thing to see. When it happened, there was a full stretcher that they wheeled him off in. And this was during a time where he really started breaking out as an all-star. He was one of those players that became very exciting. Getting traded away from the Thunder, people were saying, obviously the Thunder had won that trade, got Paul George, what have you. But Oladipo all of a sudden started going off, and he's the Pacers' biggest star, so to have him back definitely is a big push. They were up against a Bulls team that hasn't been great this year at all. They're one spot out of a playoff spot right now. They're 3 games back of the Brooklyn Nets, who are 5-5 in their last 10 games. So you can safely say that the Bulls have just been very mediocre this year. But, the Pacers had a lot going for them, had their star coming back, and the Bulls were also missing Otto Porter Jr., Lauri Markkanen, and Wendell Carter Jr., so it's a pretty good game for Oladipo to come back into and just kind of get a rhythm. At the end of the first quarter, there was only 1 point difference. This game was extremely back and forth, and in the whole game, there was 19 lead changes, and it was 13 times where it was tied, so these two teams were battling. Oladipo had a really decent start. In 4 minutes and 12 seconds, he had 4 points, 1 rebound, 2 assists. So decent stats in just a short amount of time. So it was definitely a promising thing to see. The Pacers ended up taking a 55-51 lead into halftime. But then the Bulls all of a sudden shot lights out, 73% from the field and 42.9% from 3. Where Kobe White shot 3 for 3 from three-point land. So all of a sudden the Bulls kind of started taking control. The game was all tied up heading into the fourth. And the Bulls had built up a lead. And in the final 2.5 minutes, the Pacers were on the other end of luck of pushing to make a last-ditch effort comeback. And during this time, they went on a 7-0 run. And it was capped off by none other than Victor Oladipo. Just a great feel-good story here. He got the ball on the inbounds, and with 10 seconds left, he launched a three-pointer that dropped to tie the game and send it to overtime. He had to say this, quote, "I just shot it. Mamba mentality, man. Mamba mentality. That's for Kobe and all the people that were on the helicopter," end quote. this is such a great moment for Victor Oladipo because, he hadn't been playing for over a year. He had missed his last 6 shots from three-point land, and he just went up with confidence, and he tied the game to send it to OT. And unfortunately, his night would end there because of minutes restrictions, much like Zion Williamson, like we talked about. When you have your star player coming back from an injury, you don't want to rush anything. And that's kind of the same case here. They just don't want to push him too soon, even though it was such a great moment. It's all about the long-term plan. And luckily for Oladipo, he could tie the game, send it to OT, and then from there, Brogdon could take over, and he scored 7 points in overtime. And the Pacers would end up winning 115-106 in overtime. It was just a great win for the Pacers. Great welcome back for Victor Oladipo. Chandler Hutchinson on the Bulls had 21 points. That was a career high. He was actually the one guarding Oladipo on his 3, though, so I'm sure that's what he'll be more remembered for in this game. Levine had 20 points, 4 rebounds, and 9 assists. So he played really well. Thaddeus Young, 16 points. And then 2 more players had 11 points, but it just wasn't enough high-volume scoring from the Chicago Bulls to hold on to this win and ride it out, because they did have the lead going down the stretch, but Pacers, got to give them credit. They fought to the very end. T.J. Warren led the way for them with 25 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 steals, so pretty decent stat line from him. He's been playing really well this year. Sabonis, another player that's been playing really well this year. 37th double-double this season. That's insane. Had 15 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. Brogdon had 15 as well. Also 8 rebounds and 9 assists with 3 steals. So he had a great stat line. Was all over the court, playing extremely well. Justin Holiday, 13 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. And then Victor Oladipo, his stats were not that pretty. Very not good for him. 9 points, 2 rebounds, 4 assists on 2 of 8 shooting and 1 for 7 from three-point land. His lone three-pointer came after he missed his first 6 attempts, marking the second most attempts he has taken before a make in a game in his career. So not the best stat line for him. Obviously, there's going to be some rust after not playing for a long time, so they give him some slack for that for sure. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And you know why it doesn't matter? It's because he's clutch. He's made a 3 for a tie or the lead in the final 20 seconds of the fourth quarter or overtime 3 times since the start of the 2018 season. That's tied with Paul George and Marcus Morris for most in the NBA, and he has only played in 37 of a possible 130 games. That's how clutch Victor Oladipo is. Now playing for a year, steps up, hadn't made his previous 6 3-pointers, but he didn't care. He just went up with confidence and took the game. Took it to overtime, and they won. And he was extremely emotional after the game. He said, quote, "I feel like I've been in a WWE fight with The Undertaker, and he just threw me in the cage, and he came from the top rope at the end of the day. At the end of the day, can't nothing steal my joy. My body feels phenomenal right now. I did pretty good with the 21 minutes. I just have to keep getting better, get my body used to that level of basketball again, and eventually my body will come, but my mind was always there," end quote. And so, obviously, when you have such a gruesome injury, it's going to be tough. I mean, it's just an uphill battle trying to get back to where he was. And he was saying how, it's an extremely painful and uncomfortable injury he had to deal with for over a year. And so there's a lot of patience with it. I mean, when you're rehabbing every single day, doing the same thing over and over again, it can make somebody go mad for sure. So to have him come back and be as productive as he was, obviously not with the numbers, but to have his impact and put his stamp on the game was huge for him. And he's on a minutes restriction right now, 24 minutes per game. So there's no rushing him back, just kind of like Zion, like I said. He'll be coming off the bench, and he won't do back-to-backs at all. But if he comes back anywhere close to where he used to be playing, the Pacers are going to be legit. Sabonis is one of the best centers in the league. He's undersized for a center for sure, but his passing ability and his ability to score points when the Pacers need it is, one of the better players in the league. T.J. Warren, his scoring output is improved tremendously this year, and now add Victor Oladipo into that mix. If he gets back in a couple weeks, maybe a month, where the Pacers are already at, I mean, they're playing really well in the Eastern Conference. They're 5th right now, just a game out of 4th, and just 2.5 out of 2nd. So they're hanging in this race, and they've done it all this time without their star player, Victor Oladipo. So, I mean, they have all the pieces to give him the right amount of time to be successful and get back to where he was. It's just about that chemistry and fitting him back into rotations without jeopardizing what they've been able to accomplish so far this season. So it'll be interesting to see just how well he recovers and how well this team meshes once he's back to his full ability. Coming up next, we check in with the Blazers, and that features one of the best matchups in the NBA between Damian Lillard and Russell Westbrook. We talk about why and how the game went coming up next.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. We just talked about how Victor Oladipo, after over a year, has finally come back with an injury. He ended up hitting a very clutch three-pointer late in the game to send it to overtime. And it was just a real good feel-good story because he hadn't been playing in so long, and for him to come back and have an impact like that, just such a clutch moment, is really nice to see. And it's always good to see when players come back from injury and can still be effective. His stat line wasn't great. He's on a minutes restriction still, but the way that Victor Oladipo is built, I know he'll be back to his full ability soon. And kind of switching gears here now, we're going to talk about the Portland Trailblazers' most recent game against the Houston Rockets, because these two teams, I don't know what it is. There's just a lot of love lost between these teams. I mean, Melo versus the Rockets, that's kind of like a revenge game for him. And then there's Damian Lillard versus Russell Westbrook. The Rockets had been without James Harden their last two games with a thigh contusion, so they're kind of excited to have him back in this game. Pretty big matchup. The last game where Harden didn't play, Russell Westbrook didn't play because of just resting him, and I think Capella didn't play either. It was just Eric Gordon, and he dropped 50. And they won the game. Crazy, crazy, crazy. The Blazers, we've talked about it before. They've been very disappointing this year. They're not in the playoff spot as of right now. Much like the Bulls, they've just been very mediocre. They're 5-5 in their last 10 games. And, you know, with all the pieces that they have, for them to be as bad as they are, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum's probably the best backcourt in the NBA right now. Especially since Steph and Clay are both out injured. And then have a center like Hassan Whiteside. They still don't have Nurkic. He's injured right now, but Melo was a good addition. And now they got Bazemore too, so I feel like they're very well-rounded and well-versed, and I feel like they should be one of the better teams in the Western Conference, but they just haven't lived up to that, haven't been playing that well. But the last time they played the Rockets, they just get up for this game. The last time they beat them 117-107, and it was kind of a revenge game for Melo. It was just a couple weeks ago. In that game, Melo had 18 points and 12 rebounds on 7 of 10 shooting. So that was one of his better games. Very, very impactful in many ways and very efficient as well. But he's just been playing really well for this Portland team, and he's been a better contributor and just a better teammate as a whole. I feel like Melo was very egotistical, especially on the Houston Rockets, where he kind of laughed at the question of would he be okay with coming off the bench, because he thinks, why would I come off the bench? I'm Melo, So it's definitely good to see him in a happier state and a more accepting of his role and what he can really contribute to the team. He also recently stated that he wants to retire in Portland. He's on a 1-year, $2.2 million deal right now. A couple years ago, he probably would have expected to finish in New York, just the way his career had went and just how loved he is there. But then he left to OKC to team up with Russ and Paul George. That was short-lived, didn't really work out. And then he headed to Houston, where that really didn't work out. And then all of a sudden he was out of basketball for over a year. Portland ended up picking him up happily, even extended and guaranteed his contract for a year. And it's just been a very good pairing so far. I mean, they haven't had the results to show for it, but he's been effective. He's averaged 16.1 points on 43.5% shooting. So he's been pretty efficient, been a good role player, knows that he's not the man on that team. It's very well known that it's Damian Lillard, and some nights it's CJ McCollum. But it's just another feel-good story because he deserves to be in the league. He's a future Hall of Famer, one of the most elite scorers the league has seen, and he deserves to be playing in this league. He also said that he just loves the group. They've been very accepting of him since day one, and he's just been on board. He's been accepting of everything. He's good with doing whatever he can to help the organization and help the team. So it's just a good situation for them. And if he wants to retire in Portland, hopefully it's mutual for him so he doesn't drop out of the league again. But yeah, back to the game against the Rockets. Maybe another revenge game for Melo. He probably doesn't care about it as much at this point. But really, it's a battle between Lillard and Russell Westbrook. He and Russ, I don't know what it is. These two just don't like each other. They're always barking at each other. The last game, Russ said that to Lillard, "You can't guard me," as he went to the free throw line, saying that, because I'm shooting free throws, those are free points. So if you're fouling me, you obviously can't guard me. But when Russ said this, he was down by 20 or something like that. They were getting blown out. So I just think Russell Westbrook, honestly, is a clown. I really think he is, because he had no room. And what's the point in saying that? Okay, he can't guard you, but your team's still losing by that much. Plus, Dame Lillard was playing just as well in that game, if not better. And Dame apparently said to him in that game, "You don't want to see me in a playoff matchup, though." And if you don't know why that's hilarious, let me give you a little refresher. Last year, the Blazers and the Thunder were matched up in the West in the playoffs, and Damian Lillard stepped back from basically half court, shot a long three over Paul George to clinch the series and knock out the Thunder, effectively ruining the Thunder's any last chance of winning a title with Russell Westbrook, because it ended up having Paul George leave to go to the Clippers and having Russ leave to the Rockets. So he just knocked out Russell Westbrook like that in just crazy fashion and sent him to the Rockets, who Lillard also sent home a couple years ago with another long three, another buzzer beater to clinch. So Damian Lillard is he's so clutch. And for him to have said this to Russ, kind of shutting him up, was just very poetic. I thought a very good clap back for sure. So seeing these two go head-to-head, it's always fun. It's always a good time to watch these two play. There's only one lead change in this entire game, so very bipolar in this game for sure. Houston outplayed Portland in the first quarter. Russ had 8 points. Harden had 7. Macklemore had 12 points off the bench, though, so not something you would expect, but definitely appreciated from the Rockets' standpoint. But Damian Lillard was up for the task. He put up 16 points of his own to kind of keep Portland close enough and the Rockets led 36-30. But in the second, Portland outscored the Rockets 41-24. That was crazy. Westbrook added 11 to his tally, but he was pretty much the only one that was scoring, where on the other hand, it was just a great team effort from the Blazers to really bring this lead back, with Lillard having 9, kind of leading the way. But throughout the whole roster, people were being effective. So all of a sudden, the Blazers took the lead, 71-60 at half. And like I said, there's only one lead change in this game, and there it was. So that's kind of foreshadowing that the Blazers are going to win this game. In the third, it was quiet. Not a lot of outpouring of scoring, but the Blazers extended their lead more. Their biggest lead at one point was 20. The Rockets did outscore the Blazers in the fourth, but Portland cruised to a 125-112 win. Westbrook, he did his part. He was up for the matchup, of course. He scored 39 points, had 10 rebounds, and 6 assists, with 2 steals and a block. So he was all over the place. You know Russ. He's very well-versed. He's got an all-around game, and he can be very effective. But the number that sticks out to me is that he had 6 turnovers. So I didn't think he played that well in that aspect. He's one of those players that I feel like turns over the ball too much just because he's very careless with the basketball ball. So, I mean, for me, that just outshines his stat line, even though he did lead his team in scoring. But even still, it was his 21st game in a row with 20 or more points as well. So good on him for that. Harden, on the other hand, was very quiet. Had 18 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, and two blocks, though. So on the defensive end, he got it done. I'm not sure how, because people are always talking about how bad his defense is, but he got a pretty good stat line this time. But only 18 points. He's leading the league in scoring. He's down to 35.7 points per game, which is still insane. So for him to average that many points per game and only put up 18 was definitely interesting to see. Probably won't expect that again. It's probably just because he had 2 games off and he was a little out of rhythm, I would assume. But he had 6 turnovers as well. So between Westbrook and Harden, they each had 12 turnovers combined, and so that's not ideal for your 2 stars to be turning the ball over that much. McElmore had 17 points. Rivers had 17 points as well. Gordon only had 8 points. PJ Tucker only had 5 points, and Capella only had 2 points. So that's where it really fell off for the Rockets. Those other role players that they expect to help in their efforts just didn't show up this game. Especially Eric Gordon. I mean, scoring 8 points after dropping 50 is just very confusing to see. But the Blazers, nevertheless, walk away with this one. McCollum had 22 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, with 2 blocks and 2 steals. So he was all over the place, played really well. Trevor Ariza just came over from the Sacramento Kings. Wasn't effective over there at all. But he matches his season high in this game. 21 points with 2 steals and 4 rebounds. So, he didn't thrive in Sacramento at all, but he's doing pretty well so far for the Blazers. For the Blazers. So, and Hassan Whiteside, 15 points, 10 rebounds with 5 blocks. So that's a great stat line for your big man. Getting a double-double, but then 5 blocks as well, just protecting the rim, playing really well. Melo, he didn't have a great game. Only had 6 points on 2 of 11 shooting. So that efficiency that I talked about earlier wasn't in this game. But he did grab 13 boards and had 5 assists. So he did help out his team in other facets as well. And also in this game, he did move to 17th on the all-time scoring list. So just a good mark for him, a landmark for him, a good achievement. But in this game, it was just all about Damian Lillard. He had his first career triple-double. Wait, Damian Lillard got his first career triple-double in 8 seasons? Believe that if you want. But, yeah, in this game, he had 36 points, 10 rebounds, 11 assists. But he did have 8 turnovers. So, talk about having turned over the ball too much. When I talk about Westbrook and talk about Harden, I got to look at Damian Lillard and think, how on earth are you turning the ball over 8 times? He did get his first career triple-double, but it's blemished by the fact that he had that many turnovers. So a guy like him with as good handles as he has, you can't expect that from him. And I know that he won't let that happen again. This was his 6th straight game, scoring 30 or more points, which is a franchise record. He set another franchise record a couple games ago against the Warriors, where he dropped 61 points. He's also the reigning Western Conference Player of the Week, averaging 52.7 points per game and 9.3 assists during that time. That's insane. This guy has been red hot, probably the hottest guy in the league right now. And it's just funny because his teammates wanted him to get the rebound for the triple-double because there was a lot of time left in the game, and he knew he only needed one more. And so he kind of hunted for it, where generally he wouldn't do that. He said, based on just some advice that his father gave him, just to let the game come naturally to him, to let it flow, and never just go and chase, stats. But for this one, there was just so much time left on the clock that he just figured, you know what, let me just go grab another board, get this triple-double, and get this win. So they did that. A cool little side note of this game, both coaching staffs, wore Kobe's to honor him. And he'll continue to be honored and remembered throughout the league. And then another player that looked up to him, truly loved him, was Kyrie Irving. We talked about it last podcast. He didn't play in his last game, the day of Kobe's passing, but he did return in his latest game. So we take a look at that coming up next.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. We've just talked about how Damian Lillard has been red hot as of late and just took down the Houston Rockets as well, getting his first career triple-double, which is insane to me because a player as good as he is and as well-versed as he is, I would expect him to have gotten one already, but nope, his first career triple-double, beat the Rockets, beat Russell Westbrook, even more importantly, and just been on fire lately. Both teams had their coaching staffs work Kobe's to honor Kobe Bryant, just passed away on Sunday, January 26, 2020, with his daughter Gianna as well. And a big player, that loved Kobe was Kyrie Irving. He was very close to Kobe, so it was just tough for him. And he said that, it's still heartbreaking, but he's doing his best. And that's all anyone can do. And sometimes playing the game of basketball could be something therapeutic for these players. So I think it's good that Kyrie got back out on the hardwood. Dinwiddie, like I had mentioned, was among those who changed their jerseys. He was previously number 8, but now he's 26. On the other side of the court in this game was Markieff Morris, who changed his number as well from 8 to 88 to pay double respect, like I said before. And in this game, there was a great pregame tribute to Bryant, showing his greatest highlights, as well as lighting up the numbers 8 and 24 on the court. And during this time, you could see that Kyrie Irving was very emotional during this, almost brought to tears. And the Nets also left 2 seats open with flowers in them. And the reason why they did this is because Bryant and his daughter Gianna, like I mentioned before, sat in those seats December 21st against Atlanta because Gianna's favorite player was Trae Young. So they just wanted to see him play there. There was this viral video going around of Kobe teaching Gianna just teaching her about the game. And they were like watching the game together. He's showing her whatever. And that's where it happened, was on this court, on this hardwood. So they left the seats open for them, which I thought was a great tribute for them. Very sentimental for sure. In this game, the Nets got off to a great start, where the Pistons, on the other hand, started out very slow. The Nets had a 16-4 lead with 7 minutes to go in the first quarter, and then all of a sudden, Detroit kind of woke up. End of the first quarter, it was 32-30, so that big lead that the Nets had gained early on was gone just like that, only 2 points up at the end of the first. In the second, it was much better battle, with each team scoring 38 points. Reggie Jackson, who has been out a lot this year, just very injury-prone this year, he had 14 points in this quarter, and Spencer Dinwiddie had 12. So the Nets had a 2-point lead at halftime. And then in similar fashion to the start of the first quarter, same kind of thing happened in the third, where the Pistons just started out very slowly and the Nets kind of just jumped out. Irving had 11 points. Their lead was now up to 6. But in the beginning of the fourth, they used a 12-4 run, mostly led by Spencer Dinwiddie, to extend the lead 111-97. And from there, the Pistons just could not recover. The Nets won this game 125-115. Spencer Dinwiddie led the way, had 28 points, 3 rebounds, and 6 assists. He was very emotional after the game. Obviously, Kobe was someone that he looked up to as well, and said that, you know, there was a lot of emotions in his game, and he was just glad that he can get the win for the team. Taurean Prince had 22 points and 7 rebounds with 4 steals, so he was doing great on the defensive end. Irving, he had 20 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, so very well versed with 2 steals, and he played a great game too in his return. Obviously, it's tough for him, for Dinwiddie, for anybody really that even knew Kobe slightly, but Kyrie had a great relationship with him, put up great numbers though in this win, and he could be happy about that. And then Allen and LeVert each had 11 as well. Irving had some really nice words after the game that I really liked hearing from him. I don't necessarily always like what he says off the court or what have you, but this is a great quote from him. He said, quote, "I think the most beautiful thing is that it's connecting all of us," talking about Kobe, of course. "And his seeds that he's planted in all of us will continue to grow. I'm just going to continue to carry the torch," end quote. And I liked seeing this because, you know, he's very right. He's completely right. The most beautiful thing is that it's connecting all of us. Kobe's passing is something of great tragedy, but to see the NBA community come together the way that it has been really beautiful to see. And the types of ways that they're recognizing him and paying him tribute has been really, really touching and really, important as well, I think, for the healing process. Kind of moving away from sentiment for a second, Dwayne Casey, the coach of the Detroit Pistons, was super tough on his guys following this loss. He said, quote, he said that he was not happy with slow starts to quarters, and then he said this, quote, "We've got to figure it out. We've got to figure out 5 or 6 or even 7 men that's going to come in and compete at a high level no matter what your contract says. We've got to find them," end quote. So clearly he's not happy with the production within his squad. I mean, got to give them some benefit of the doubt. They've had a lot of injuries this season. One of them including Reggie Jackson, like I said. He's been very injury prone, but this has been one of his better games on the season so far. He had 23 points, 3 rebounds, 5 assists. And then D Rose, he missed the last game with knee soreness. But he came back and scored 22 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and extending his streak to 13 games with 20 or more points. So D Rose is really showing his value and really turning back the clock, playing really well. Christian Wood had 20 points, 8 rebounds with 2 steals. And Andre Drummond had a double-double with 12 points, 13 rebounds, 4 assists, with 2 blocks and 2 steals. So he was getting it done everywhere. I definitely think he could have brought a little more in the points category, but that's for another game, clearly. Markieff Morris had 15 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists. So he played pretty well in his debut in his New Jersey 88. And his brother Marcus Morris had a little battle of his own. And I'm not talking in basketball terms. They had a battle within the game on the hardwood. I'm talking like actual battle, as in like physical altercation. The Grizzlies were playing the Knicks, and they were destroying them. They're up 124-106, and with 48 seconds left, Crowder kind of stole the ball on an errant inbounds pass from Randall. It was just a weird inbounds pass, not really targeting anyone, kind of just thrown on the floor. And Crowder went and grabbed it. And so when he grabbed it, he ran out to three-point line with the ball and lined up to shoot. And when he shot it, Elfrid Payton of the Knicks ran up and shoved him into the stands. And this caused the benches to clear, of course. Marcus Morris, Crowder, along with Payton, all were ejected for instigating the fighting. And so this comes down to the discussion of whether or not this was disrespectful. I mean, the Grizzlies were already winning as much as they were. There's nothing wrong with him going again to steal. But I think where the problem lies is the fact that he ran from where he stole the ball out to the three-point land to kind of put salt in the wounds. You don't really need to run up the score like that, especially if you're running back to get, a three-pointer. If you steal the ball and lay it in, that's a different thing, I think. But I think the fact that he ran out to three-point land, Payton didn't like that. The rest of the Knicks didn't appreciate that. And so it's kind of that fine line of unspoken respect. You just don't do that. But I don't see any harm in it, honestly. Morris, after the game, he did not like this at all. He said, quote, "He plays the game a different way. He's got a lot of female tendencies on the court, flopping around and throwing his head back the entire game. It's a man's game, and you just get tired of it. When you step back and shoot a three and, rub it in, he's unprofessional. He's soft. His game is soft, very womanlike," end quote. This is so bad. That's just such a bad thing to say. For him to use the word female tendencies, that's just, I can understand his perspective. He's disappointed after a loss. He's in his feelings. He's emotional. He's mad. But word choice, man, word choice. I mean, think about it. How is this going to make females across the world feel? I mean, this is just so disrespectful in your own right. And then for him to say that, Crowder's soft, his game is soft or whatever, I feel like he's being extremely soft by just crying about this game. You lost the game, man. You lost the game. You're soft for caring that much about, a guy stealing the ball and going to shoot a three. So I just thought that was a really bad quote coming from Marcus Morris, and somebody that I feel like has been playing so well. His stock has been rising to go to teams or whatever, but then he does stuff like this where it's controversial, and some organizations just don't want to deal with that kind of drama, and I think that hurts his stock for sure, in my opinion. He did do the right thing later on. He apologized later the same night, saying he didn't mean to disrespect women and that he has the utmost respect for women and everything they mean to us. So good on him to come back on his words, but know that in the moment, don't just disrespect a whole gender because you're angry about something some other guy did. And so I go back to whether or not Payton was wrong about this. I mean, yes, it's kind of disrespectful in a way. Crowder didn't need to do what he did. But then again, it wasn't necessary to start all this brawling and all this drama. And to add to the drama, John Morant said, apparently after the game, he said that there was no hot water and only 3 drops of water in the visitor's shower after the game. So I don't know if this was just some more pettiness to throw the Grizzlies' way from the Knicks or just coincidence or what. But it was just a crazy story in the NBA that, you don't want to see. It's just so unnecessary and really unfortunate too. So I'm not really sure how to feel about that. I just think it's crazy. And another crazy moment on the court, in the right way though, with the game being exciting, happened the other night in Minnesota against the Kings. We check in with 2 of the worst teams in the West coming up next.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. We just talked about how Kyrie came back from not playing his previous game, learning about Kobe Bryant's death. But he did return to the hardwood and got the win against the Pistons. Great win for the Nets, as they haven't won that much as of late. They've been struggling, but they came back and won this game. And then we kind of touched about the brawl in New York between the Grizzlies' Jay Crowder and the Knicks' Marcus Morris and Peyton. And it's just a really unfortunate situation to see. I do understand from a player standpoint that it was kind of disrespectful from Jay Crowder to do what he did, but I just didn't think it was what the response was warranted. I didn't think it was necessary. So I thought that was a really crazy situation. And another crazy situation where a history was made was between the Timberwolves and the Sacramento Kings. Both teams are honestly garbage. They're battling for 13th and 14th in the West. They're doing a great job battling. They've stayed down there pretty much all year. The Kings are 3-7 in their last 10. Minnesota, though, they're on a 10-game losing streak with the Clippers next on their schedule. So it's been rough to be a Timberwolves fan, I'm sure. Speaking of the Timberwolves, though, just real quick, I heard trade rumors about D'Lo for Cat, and I don't know. I don't think I never addressed it, and I think that it would be a very interesting trade. I don't think the Timberwolves would really get much out of that. I mean, D'Lo is a great player, but I think the Warriors would honestly win that trade a lot more, just because they've never had that kind of interior dominance that Cat can potentially bring. The Warriors organization, the last few years, have just been a jump shooting team. They stay outside of the arc. And then they have some solid contributions in the middle from role players like JaVale McGee or Zaza Pachulia, what have you. But to have a player like Cat combined with Steph Curry when he's healthy, Klay Thompson when he's healthy, that could be a dangerous team. So that'd be interesting to see. We're definitely going to monitor that before the trade deadline. We'll see if that happens. But yeah, back to this matchup between the Kings and the Timberwolves. They're just both so bad. So because they're so bad, no one was going to expect that it was going to be a pretty game at all. But it ended up being extremely exciting. It was another game that honored Kobe as well, of course. Cat spoke to the crowd, and then they showed a tribute video as well. Cat wore 24 and Covington wore 8 while they were being introduced, but then returned to their regular numbers once the game tipped off. Minnesota then took an 8-second shot clock violation, like most teams have been doing, but what's different about this one is Wiggins had set the ball on the free throw line that Bryant had scored at to pass MJ for third place on this career scoring list, December 14th, 2014. So that was a really nice sentimental touch to what most of the league has been doing and taking backcourt violations, and then following suit, Sacramento took a 24-second violation like most teams have been doing as well. So good tribute to Kobe Bryant, and then the game got started. Minnesota came out strong and honestly dominated this game. They were red hot from three, scoring a franchise record 23 three-pointers, just pouring it in. Great output of scoring from them. And it was looking like an absolute blowout in this game. The Kings were down 27 at one point. And then they kind of started going on a run in the fourth, but we're still down 17 with 2:49 left in the fourth quarter. There's no way, right? There's no way they come back. According to ESPN stats and info, NBA teams were and 8,378 since 1996-1997 when trailing by 17 or more in the final 3 minutes of the fourth quarter or overtime. So it's safe to say history was against them. Down by that much, and the record is 0 and 8,378. There's no way, right? There's no way. Buddy Hield, who was on the Sacramento Kings, who idolized Kobe Bryant, he wears the number 24 because of him. He grew up in the Bahamas, and the reason he's in the NBA is because of Kobe Bryant. He channeled his inner Kobe in these moments. He scored 18 points in the final 4 minutes, 36 seconds of regulation to bring the Kings close all of a sudden. And then all of a sudden, De'Aaron Fox is at the free throw line, and they trailed by 3. He made his first free throw, and then he intentionally missed the second free throw to perfection. If you haven't seen this, look it up. It hit the bottom of the front of the rim for it to bounce back to him perfectly so he could lay it in and tie the game with 3.6 seconds left, and eventually went to OT from there. And it was just insane to see because, you know, you've seen players obviously trying to intentionally miss a free throw to get the rebound, but he did it perfectly, went right back to him, and he could lay it in with really no contest at all. And then eventually from there, the Kings went on and won this game. I mean, the first time since 1996-97 after trailing by 17 in the final 3 minutes. Crazy stuff. Buddy Hield was a big factor in this game for the reason why they won this game. He scored 42 points, turn that around, 24. On 24 shots, 24 again, Kobe Bryant, hello. He's the third player ever to score 40 or more and make 9 or more three-pointers off the bench. Oh yeah, I didn't mention, he was off the bench in this game, scored 42 points. He also scored 20 points on 6 of 6 shooting in the fourth quarter, and the only other player in the last 20 seasons to have a 20-point quarter on 100% shooting in the fourth quarter where a team overcame a 25-point deficit to win, Kobe Bryant in 2002. I mean, what? Stat lines like this are so chilling. I mean, there's no way that it's that big of a coincidence. And Buddy Hield had this to say after the game. He said, quote, "That's the reason I wanted to play in the NBA, because of Kobe. I feel that he was with me. He never gives up. That's his mentality. Never give up. I can't wait to have a son and tell my son about this game. Tell my son about Kobe Bryant. I want to show him his highlights, but I'm going to show him that this was the guy that inspired me. This was the guy who inspired the world," end quote. So, for him to have the stat line that he did, and then show that much respect to him as well, the guy who inspired the world, I really appreciate that for sure. Buddy Hield with a night to remember, a career game. He ended up with 42 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. Great game for him. De'Aaron Fox as well. He had 22 points, 7 rebounds, 8 assists. 17 of those 22 points coming in the second half and overtime. So he was clutch for sure. He had 1 steal and 2 blocks as well. Bielitsa, who's been a really good piece for the Kings, has had 20 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists with 2 steals and 3 blocks. So he got it done all over the court. Bazemore, one of their newest additions in that trade with Portland that saw him come over, had 15 points and 5 rebounds. And on the other hand, the Timberwolves, they blew a huge lead. So they're on the other side of history. Super unfortunate for them. Wiggins had 36 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists. Covington had 24 points, 7 rebounds. And then Cat had 23 points and 8 rebounds. But the next highest scorer for the Timberwolves only had 10 points. So they struggled as a team as a whole. Big Three kind of did what they were supposed to do, but just not enough outpouring from the rest of the team. And I forget who it said, but I read a quote from one of the Timberwolves players that said, "We did a dishonor to Kobe. I mean, he would be disappointed in us in this game," basically is what he was saying. To give up a lead like that and to stop competing. And so I think that the Timberwolves will probably use this as a lesson, use this as motivation, maybe to turn things around, because that's just really unfortunate for them to give up a lead like that and lose this game. But good on the Kings for coming back and winning. Another little tribute for Kobe happened in Philadelphia. Embiid had worn number 24 for just this one game instead of his usual 21. in a Sixers 115-104 win over the Warriors. Kobe was inspired Embiid as well to play basketball, as Joel was a kid in Africa watching Kobe in the 2010 finals that apparently made him have a career switch. He was a volleyball player at the time, but once he saw Kobe play the way he did, he wanted to be just like him, and he switched the sport. The whole squad for the Sixers wore 24 or 8 warm-ups, just to give him, respect there. And then Joel Embiid actually got permission from Hall of Famer Bobby Jones to wear the retired 24 jersey just for this one game, and he did it happily. It was Joel's first game back since he tore a ligament in his finger on his left hand. He had a double-double in this game, but more importantly, he had 24 points. I mean, it's just another performance where there's no way it's coincidence. There's no way. And to get his 24 points, he did it as Kobe-esque as he possibly could have, with a fadeaway shot from the baseline that Kobe would hit over and over again. And he said later that he even screamed on that shot, "Kobe!" So I just think that's just such a great story. And it's just so great to see from around the league what they've been doing for Kobe. And these stat lines, like I just keep mentioning, are just eerie. It's crazy how they're just so symbolic, and it pays great tribute to Kobe as a whole, and I just think it's so cool to see. But coming up next, to finish off the show, we've got some predictions for you guys for the next couple of days through the weekend, so stay with us.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. We just talked about how the Kings made history by coming back down 17 with less than 3 to play. They somehow came back. De'Aaron Fox hit a free throw and then missed a free throw on purpose to get the ball back, lay it in, and tie the game to send it to overtime. And Buddy Hield with a career-high 42 points on 24 shots. Crazy. And he had 100% shooting output in the fourth quarter, came back and won from a 25-point deficit. Last player to do that in the last 20 seasons, Kobe Bryant. And I just think, I go back to that stat line because I just think it's crazy. It's not a coincidence at all. But yeah, moving forward, we're going to talk about some predictions of some big games coming up in the next couple days. On Thursday, we see the Utah Jazz versus the Denver Nuggets. I think this is a great matchup. It's one that I've been waiting to see for a while now because these two teams have been neck and neck in the Western Conference as of late, especially. They're basically tied for third. Denver is on top. I don't know what the formality of why they're the ones on top, but they are. Utah, right now, they're on a 2-game skid, so they're not playing as well as they had been when they were just on fire. And the Nuggets lost their last contest as well. But the Nuggets in this game, they won't have Jamal Murray, and they won't have Paul Millsap, so they're hurting. Got a couple guys out due to injury. The latest loss for the Jazz was to the Spurs, so I don't think that'll happen again. I'm going with the Utah Jazz in this game. I just think that they are better equipped to win this game. In a game where the Nuggets don't have Jamal Murray, they don't have Paul Millsap, they're going to rely heavily on Jokic, and Utah Jazz have the better center in my opinion in terms of true center. Rudy Gobert, one of the best rim protectors, one of the best rebounders in the league. I think he'll be a good combatant to Jokic. Obviously, Jokic has more scoring ability and better passing, but if it's down low and he's bumping up with Rudy Gobert, I think Gobert can hold him at bay for sure. And then Donovan Mitchell is the X factor in this game for me. He's going to go off. He'll probably lead the team in scoring, and the Jazz are going to coast. They're going to win this game by more than 10, I think. That's my prediction for this one. Moving on, we got on Friday the Houston Rockets versus the Dallas Mavericks. This is a big game, in my opinion, because both of these teams have had a lot of questions surrounding them and just how versatile they are, because they've been very inconsistent. I think the Rockets have a lot more expectations because they have Russell Westbrook, they have James Harden. Those two, even though I think they will never really mesh perfectly, they're both offensive forces in the league, so they should be able to put out enough outpouring of scoring just between the two of them to carry the Rockets for the most part. Then you add on Eric Gordon, you add on PJ Tucker, who's not going to score a bunch of points, but he's a good role player, and then Capella as well. The Rockets are better equipped to win this game, but the Dallas Mavericks have the better player, in my opinion, in Luka Doncic. The way that he's been playing this year, I think, even though James Harden leads the league in scoring, I think Luka Doncic is a better player. I think he's second in the MVP racing, at least in my mind, only behind Giannis because of how well he's been playing and how well the Bucks have been playing as a whole. But if Luka Doncic goes off like he does, if Porzingis can give that kind of output that you would hope to see on a consistent basis from Porzingis, then I think the Mavericks have a chance in this game. They also did just get Willie Cauley-Stein from the Warriors because Dwight Powell went down with an injury, so that's a huge blow to them. I don't think Willie Cauley-Stein fills that void that Dwight Powell had previously held in the same manner at all, because Dwight Powell was a workhorse. He was all over the boards. He was just a true warrior. And I don't think Willie Cauley-Stein has that same work ethic, has that same drive or aggressiveness to him. He can be a threat on the lob, definitely can grab some boards for them, but he won't have the same effect, in my opinion. So there's a lot of question marks surrounding these two teams, and in which point there's a lot of question marks surrounding the game. So I'm going to go with the Houston Rockets only because I think they just have a deeper squad, and I think that because James Harden had such a low outpouring of scoring in his last contest, that he's going to respond really well with this game and just go off and get back to his crazy stat lines. He averages 35-something points a game, and he only scored 18 last time, so I don't think that'll happen again. Russell Westbrook will be too much as well. He'll be just a handful to deal with. And when you have those two on the same page scoring a lot, it's going to be tough to beat them. And they also have Capella as well, who's going to add in a good amount. And then Gordon off the bench is better than, say, Seth Curry off the bench. So I think the Rockets are going to win this game. Not by a lot. They'll win by, I think, the over-under margin of victory in this game should be like 7. And I think they'll win over 7, but not by much. Friday also has another great matchup in the Pelicans and the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies have been hot as of late. They've been playing really well. They're really solidifying themselves as the 8th place seed in the Western Conference. They're 2.5 games up on the San Antonio Spurs right now, and they're making headway to be in that race with 2 through 7. And I think that they can definitely hold on and be a force in the Western Conference. I mean, they're 8-2 in their last 10 games. They're on a 4-game win streak. But on the other hand, the Pelicans, I think, are another team that could be up in the playoff race in a couple weeks, maybe a month. They just really need to start making some headway on these other teams that are in front of them. They are 5 games out from the Grizzlies. So I think it will take some time and will take some help from other teams losing and such. But the Pelicans have a lot of ability to them, especially now that Zion Williamson's back too. All that hype about him. He's been playing pretty well as of late. So it's exciting to see, and I think that this is going to be a great game because it's John Morant versus Zion Williamson, Rookie of the Year race. Even though Zion's, it shouldn't even be a question. It shouldn't even be a race. It should be John Morant's Rookie of the Year trophy. But people are going to say that this is the Rookie of the Year race just because Zion was expected to win it before he even got injured. So I don't think he'll make enough impact in just half a year to win this contest, but to see these two go head-to-head for the first time, it's going to be exciting to see. I think I'm going to have to... I'm going to stick with the Pelicans. I'm going to go with the Pelicans in this game. They haven't done me wrong. Last predictions I did, I never gave you guys the results because of, obviously, the news that happened about Kobe Bryant, so couldn't give you the results, but the Pelicans did beat the Celtics, which I predicted. It was kind of like one of those games where you just hope on one team and hope that they win because the Celtics definitely should have won that game, but they didn't. So I'm going to stick with the Pelicans. They've been my team a lot during these predictions, my team this year, and I just think they have a lot of potential, and I just really like them. So I think they're going to beat the Grizzlies, and this whole Zion versus John Morant thing is going to be pushed even further, and it's going to be great to see. It's going to be fun to see. So that's happening Friday, Pelicans and Grizzlies. A little side note, Friday, the Lakers also play again for the first time against the Trailblazers. I'm not doing really a prediction on that. I just want to say that's a big game to watch. I think it's going to be a good tribute for Kobe, and I really hope that the Lakers pull out a win. And now moving over to Saturday, 76ers versus the Boston Celtics. I feel like I might have done a prediction on this type of matchup before. And whenever it involves the 76ers, I'm always wrong because they're just so inconsistent, and it's hard to tell when they're going to be good or when they're just going to be terrible because that's pretty much how it's been this year so far. They're just very up and down. They're currently 6th in the East, technically tied with the Pacers. Both have the same record. But, yeah, again, the formality, I don't know what it is that makes them not in 5th instead of 6th. They're on a 2-game win streak. They're 7-3 in their last 10. They've been playing a lot better. The Celtics, on the other hand, they were in 2nd just a couple weeks ago. They're now in 4th, half a game back from 3rd and a game and a half back from 2nd. They're 6-4 in their last 10 on a 1-game win streak. But they've been kind of inconsistent, so I don't know. It's tough to say with these two teams. Like, at any given day, they can show up and play really well, or they could just be very disappointing, and, I don't know. We'll see. I think I'm going to have to go with the Boston Celtics just because I think they have more potential to them, at least as of right now. I think Jason Tatum will have a great game. Kemba Walker, of course, he's going to go off. And I don't think the 76ers are going to have enough. I mean, Joel Embiid is back, but it's hard to say how back he really is because you haven't seen much from him yet. So I think this will be a really good test for the Sixers to see where they're at, see if they can really make a push for the championship, for the playoffs, what have you. But in this particular game, I'm going to have to give it to the Boston Celtics. I think they'll win, and I think they'll beat the Sixers on Saturday night. And with that, that is our last prediction, and that'll do it for this podcast. So thank you for listening to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review because that really helps us out. Also, if you please could follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, I would greatly appreciate that. I'm Isiah Quiroz. Thank you guys, and see you next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.